I'm present. Right, good evening, everyone. This September 18th open meeting of the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission is convening by video conference pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. This meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that other people may be able to see you and take care not to share your device's screen. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please silence all phones and devices. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For public participation, we are following the Select Board's guidelines of 3 minutes per presentation. Attendees will be recognized by the chair when it's time for public comment. I am Mary Longacre, Chair of the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. And I note that we do have some people who are invited who will be promoted to panelists at the appropriate point in the meeting. So just keep an eye on that. All right, members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Seth Engelborg.
Here.
Christy Ferrantella.
Here.
I do not see Don Holgate at this time. Wendy Hudson.
Here.
Dave Iverson.
Here.
Bert Johnson.
Here.
Nat Lowell.
Here.
I do not see Barry Rector at this time. Joe Topham.
Here.
John Trudell. John?
Here.
Yeah, thank you. And staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Leslie Snell.
Here.
Megan Trudell.
Here.
Mike Burns.
Here.
Risa Kwame from Mass DOT.
Here.
And Holly Backus.
Present.
Thank you all. Okay, I do not have any speakers to introduce at this time. All right, so let's go ahead with approval of the agenda. Any comments or changes to the agenda, or we'll take a motion to approve as submitted? And note that we did have an amended agenda posted on Friday, I think, or Thursday, Megan?
Mm-hmm.
Or the other.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Bert. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Christy. Roll call vote. Seth Engelborg.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Wendy Hudson.
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
Aye.
Bert Johnson.
Aye.
Nat Lowell.
Aye.
Joe Topham.
Aye.
John Trudell.
Aye.
And Mary Longacre, aye. Barry, I see you have joined us. Do you want to vote on the agenda?
Yes, please, and I'm in agreement.
Thank you. Okay, public comment. I do not see any members of the public in attendance at this time. Megan, would you confirm that?
I'm not seeing anyone either.
Okay, noting that Dawn Hill Holgate is just joining us as well. So we'll move on to the minutes of July 17th. Megan, if you want to put those on the screen. Were there any comments or corrections to the minutes from July 17th? And thank you to Catherine Ansaro for typing those up for us. If there are no comments, we'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. I think that was Dave.
Second. Yep. Second.
Thank you, Nat, for seconding. Roll call vote. Seth Engelborg.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Don Holgate.
Aye.
Wendy Hudson.
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
Aye.
Bert Johnson.
Aye.
Nat Lowell.
Aye.
Barry Rector.
Aye.
Joe Topham.
Aye.
John Trudell.
Aye.
And Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you. First item on our agenda then is the Transportation Program Manager update. Mike Burns, would you go ahead, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item is to amend the current year Unified Planning Work Program to reallocate budget between planning tasks. As we get to the end of the fiscal year 2023 UPWP, more budget is necessary for management and public participation activities than was originally budgeted. Since there was unused budget for the supportive analysis and field work, this is the proposed source for the reallocated budget. Historically, management activities account for about 15% of the budget, and there was about 8% budgeted in the FY23 UPWP budget. Staff has also dedicated more time to coordinating with communication staff on public outreach. The budget for both of these tasks have been adjusted in the FY24 UPWP to account for this usage. As this amendment would not impact the overall budget or take away from task 3 items, staff recommends approval of the amendment for the FY 2023 UPWP as presented.
Any discussion from commission members? And if not, we'll take a motion to approve the budget amendment to the fiscal year 2023 UPWP as presented.
So
I'll make
moved.
that motion.
I'll
Second.
second. I'll second.
All right, I'll take Nat for the motion and Christy for the second. Thank you. Roll call vote, Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Wendy Hudson,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Bert Johnson,
Aye.
Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Barry Rector,
Aye.
Joe Topham,
Aye.
John Trudell,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you. Go ahead, Mike, with the next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item is intended as a look ahead for the FY24 planning activities. I'll use the tasks in the FY24 UPWP as a reference, but I'll focus only on the tasks that would be discussed at NPC meetings over the next few months. This may include updates to the public participation plan that was last updated in 2017. And will need to be updated to include changes discussed in 2020, the last time that we looked to revise the public participation plan before COVID happened and interrupted that updating. And it will also include updates recommended by Mass DOT. Staff is also making updates to the Title VI program that was approved this past January. The updates will address recent comments from Mass DOT, and these changes would need to be made by the end of the calendar year. All these task 1 items fall underneath management activities, and I would just ask Raisha to feel free to interject if there's anything that needs to be expanded on about these task 1 items. Regarding task 2 items, data collection is a pretty straightforward category. I'll note that complete street support is a new requirement, and we're including that in these task 2 items. The complete streets activities devoted to complete streets is required to account for 3% of the overall budget for the work program. Staff will use this time to review capital projects to ensure accommodation of all users and abilities with capital investments. Task 3 items are specific planning tasks and are more significant and account for nearly 40% of the overall UPWP budget. For fiscal year 24, staff will focus time on strategies to limit single occupant vehicle usage, which aligns with the long range transportation plan that you just recently approved, as well as the town's strategic plan. Any time needed for the potential intermodal transportation center would also use time from this task. A significant amount of time will also be needed for the regional safety action plan development. The RFP for this plan will be issued by the Franklin region in the next month, and the contract is anticipated to be executed in December. Staff will be sharing updates on this plan's development over the next few months and next 18 months, actually, because that's the time frame for that plan development. Bicycle and pedestrian planning activities includes BPAC coordination on topics such as reviewing design options for bike and pedestrian accommodations, e-bike regulations, and the future bike safety campaign, which is something that we're working on with the town staff as well as with the Chamber of Commerce, and more to be reported on that in the coming months. parking, freight, and other planning activities mainly includes assistance for traffic safety and for the proposed parking management program that the town may be pursuing in the coming months. And task 4 items are more for implementation related activities. Staff is focusing assistance on the Wawanet, Tom Nevers, and Mid-Island bike and pedestrian projects. Grant management is related to the current paperwork related to the Safe Streets for All grants and the potential Protect grant for resiliency projects. Regarding the Protect grant, the Steamship Authority, based on some recent conversations with the Steamship Authority staff, may be willing to partner with the town on the next Protect grant application, since their property, as well as some ancillary roads that feed into the terminal there, or something that they'd like to move with redesigning and rebuilding. And lastly, the last item here, 4.3, technical assistance will continue to be provided as needed to the planning board, select board, ZBA, and any student projects that we get involved with. And Madam Chair, just I wanted to share how these how the planning priorities for the long range transportation plan are being addressed through the UPWP. The idea is that all of these planning documents should be synced and relate to each other. So I think this is a good exercise to show how that's done. Planning efforts to address affordability. Well, I just note that on the far right here, if there's a check mark there, then at least in my opinion, I feel like the current FY24 UPWP addresses each of these planning priorities. If there's other language there, that's something to be discussed. Regarding affordability, this probably needs some discussion. This topic and the resident access to the vehicle ferry down at the very bottom has been discussed with Steamship Authority staff, and the product of that was perhaps that some grant opportunities could be a source of funding that would help keep rates from increasing. So that's one kind of affordability that could be addressed through UPWP time. Regarding the free fare for transit, this is not in the UPWP, and it could be added as staff assistance is needed. This will require some coordination with the NRTA and the NRTA Advisory Board. Regarding regulating the number of vehicles on island, this was a task that was programmed in past UPWPs and can be discussed again as part of long range and strategic planning. The vehicle capacity study and forecasting model that go with that item can be programmed in a future year unified planning work program if you all approve that being included in a future year UPWP. And Madam Chair, I'll say that concludes the overview and look ahead to fiscal year 24. I'm happy to answer any questions about the presentation, as well as how the planning priorities align with tasks in the UPWP.
Thank you, Mike. I want to give Raisa Kwame from Mass DOT an opportunity to comment as well before we go to commissioners. Raisa, did you have anything to add?
Yes, so this is a great overview that Mike has presented. So that new fiscal year will be starting in October. So some of the highlights that Mike mentioned are the SS4A program that we look forward to implementing. And so, yep, I'm happy, as Mike has said, to answer any questions as need be.
Thank you, Raisa. Questions or comments from commissioners, please? I know I appreciate getting this sort of big picture overview. It's helpful for me, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Nat?
Yes, I forgot to put my hand up, Mary, thanks, sorry. Mike, have you looked at I see you've got the WPI guys in there. Did you look at their thing they did this past cycle? I can't even tell you. When was it? In the spring? I can't remember exactly, but it was this, like, I believe it was late winter, early spring, or fall last year. I kind of forgot. So
yeah, they usually wrap up about around Thanksgiving, I want to say.
Okay, so it was last fall. Okay, early fall. So did you read that yet? Have you had a chance to go through that? stuff? Because there's some pretty good stuff in there.
Yes, and I'll note that that's actually under this task 3.4, parking, freight, and other planning activities. I've only included a bullet point for parking management program, but you're right. The WPI students did do an evaluation of loading zones
Yep.
and did come up with some recommendations. Those will all be coordinated or evaluated and then coordinated with the traffic safety committee. So there is time in this work program to do that. So that's something we'll progress. And I'm happy to coordinate with you outside of these meetings.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, because I took some serious time with them 2 different occasions, and I really liked them, and they were, I mean, it was good, the stuff that they looked at. I took them from one end of the ROH to the other, and literally, and we did a lot of interesting, they took notes. I'll just tell you that they took some good notes. So that, and I want to just say that as far as the steamship and stuff for residents, that gets brought up a lot. I just had a phone call today about something that's an interesting proposition the guy has. So there's more preferred space now throughout the day. That's one positive thing for locals. But the big one is going to be when these new boats that we're getting get in the system and are running for a few months, they're going to be able to be booked like the Woods Hole. Like, you're going to be able to book cars on trips that technically are not on the website. So there's going to be a lot more ability for Nantucketers to get an excursion ticket with their car. So I keep saying this, I've mentioned it multiple times, but I just want that to be understood, that it's going to be a completely different system, because these boats do not have the same regulations as the current freight boats do with weight and draft issues. So that's a really important thing. We won't notice this for 6 months into these boats coming on, but it is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if it's all right, just as a follow-up to that, I just want to thank Nat Lowell for setting up a meeting last week with the Steamship Authority staff to review the planning priorities that were recently approved in the long-range transportation plan. I went over a lot of this detail with them, which that was probably the genesis of the phone call you got. We explored a lot of ideas for getting access to the boats, making sure things are affordable, as well as other operational items. And it's Nat, through his role on the Port Council, has the ability to make contacts like that, and thought it would be valuable to have a conversation with them about the planning priorities. And it was very valuable. So I appreciate that. Just want to let the commission know.
Thank you, Nat.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Burns. I want to circle back onto the free fares for public transportation. So last winter, the NRTA, I received, I believe it was through a grant they received for Tri-Transit. They were doing free fares. And obviously this is just anecdotal information, but I saw a lot of people respond positively to that, including myself. I used it. And I was wondering if we have any data on whether that made a difference. It was in kind of the winter rather than probably the peak summer. But I would just like to say, in other municipalities throughout the state as well, there is a long history of free public transit fares with, I would say, very storied success. So I think we need to plan that as a priority moving forward. It's not the only thing that's going to be able to help people use the buses more. Like, we do need more routes and more stops and more times and a lot of other things, but it certainly helps. So I think we should try to get that into this plan if possible.
Thank you,
Sure.
Seth. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on that. Yeah, I talking with the NRTA administrator, I think they're for the free fare for not only incentivizing use to get over the barrier of having to change or a card or anything else to take the system, but also it costs money to collect money. And that whole operation is attractive to get rid of that as well. There are some performance measures and other things that I don't know if I'll go down the road of elaborating on, but there are some performance measures that exist that are related to the fares that are collected, revenue per mile, that kind of a thing. So that would be an issue that would need to be overcome to implement this, but I think there's wide support for affordable transit, as well as making stops, not just adding more stops, but making them more accessible. And that's become a priority for DOT as well. I think, and again, Raisha might know more about this than I do. There is some effort now to have some statewide or federal funding available to regions for improving accessibility for some priority stops. And right now we've kind of targeted, or I'm coordinating with an RTA to target some of the priority stops that might be within crash clusters and other areas that are would lead to a prioritization of stops for improvement.
Thank you, Mike. Raisa, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, indeed. There has been ample work that is being conducted related to safety and to bus stops in particular. So these projects are underway, and we look forward to increasing the scope on that and the specificity. So we're working with Mike and NRTA to implement that.
Thank you. Also note that we plan to invite Gary Roberts, the administrator for the NRTA, to the October meeting to tell us how the summer went. And if you have questions in advance, go ahead and send them to Megan so that she can forward them and he can be prepared to answer them. That would be helpful. That's of course pending his availability in October. Any other comments or questions for Mike on this item before we go to the next? All right, Mike, go ahead.
I think the third item there was just an update on all of the planning tasks with a narrative in a report. That's in there for informational purposes. If there was any questions about the content of that report, especially the data that's at the very end of the report, I thought was rather fascinating. I'm happy to answer any of those.
Any comments or questions from commissioners at this time? You can always come back next month with questions for Mike or reach out to him individually. But we're not going to go through the several pages of information.
Yeah.
So we thank Mike for preparing it.
Sure, Madam Chair, if it's all right, that report was something that I tried to maintain as best I could for each of the NPDC meetings for informational purposes. So I'll try to make that a habit of including that type of report and for meetings, just to let you know what's going on, if nothing else.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing further on the Transportation Program Manager update, we will move on to the area plan status update, beginning with the town area plan. And Megan, can you promote Henry Terry to a panelist, please? If he's still there.
Yep, he is coming on over.
Great. Thank you for joining us, Henry.
Hello, Madam Chair. Town area plan. We are making progress, although it is slow. We've got Amy Baxter coming in at our next meeting to help clarify some things for us. To make a long story short, I would hope that we would be done towards the end of the year, maybe the first part of next year, depending on how the holidays go. Any questions? I'll take that as a no.
Any questions or comments from commissioners? So the town area plan has been meeting twice a month for about the last 2 years, I think, Henry, and issued a survey, which the results came back from that, and has been working on the different areas of the master plan that would apply to the town area plan. And Henry, I think it's fair to say that we do not have a draft at this point, but we, just for clarification, I also serve as the NPDC representative to the town area plan work group. When we do have a draft, we'll bring it to the NPDC. Okay.
Hopefully towards the end of the year.
Barry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering, are there minutes available from those meetings that we could look through? Because I find that really helpful.
Yes, they are.
done according to open meeting law. It's on the town's website. It's under NPNEDC Work Group, I think is the name on the town's website. So all the meetings are posted, all the minutes are posted.
All right, good. No, it was just a matter of direction as to where they were, and thank you for providing that. It's just helpful for me to be able to see, where things are at, and what decisions are being made in the process. Thank you.
And the meeting recordings are also on the town's YouTube channel. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? But if none, we'll move on to the Nantucket area plan. We received a letter from the chair of that committee. Megan, if you want to go ahead and put that on the screen. And that has an update. I do not see anyone in attendance to present that, so we'll just go through the letter. That was
Mary, I can make a quick
Oh,
update.
yeah, Joe. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that.
That's okay.
And it's for clarification, Joe Topham is the NPNEDC representative to the Nantucket Area Plan Work Group. Other than let's do the resignation second. Megan, do you have the letter from the work group to put that on the screen? It was a separate document. There it is. So Joe, you want to take us through this?
Yes, please. So there was just during the meeting, I let them know that they need to share all their minutes. So Dinah Brown put this together for us, which was great. I am sad to see her depart because she was fantastic. She was someone that was very proactive in helping out communicate between the town and Nantucket. So I'm really kind of sad to see her go. But last meeting we Bob Catrava as well. He just resigned as well. But in the last meeting, there's a couple of things where Bruce Mandel is now going to be the temporary chair, kind of the way it worked out. And then Kathy Slattery can't help out for a couple months. So I don't want to say they're adrift, but right now, but they're having a hard time really getting caught up to speed. They've been very busy. Bruce is going through some personal things. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what kind of comes of their group. Michael Maynard offered a lot of good suggestions, but the one thing is they had a little bit of an issue with our guidelines for how the work group works. One, they were requested that maybe we sit down. I don't know, Mary and Barry, if you could sit down with myself and Bruce and Kathy once they are up to speed and get organized and take their positions as chair and vice chair. But the problem is that they have scheduled their next two meetings on October 23rd and November 23rd or 20th, which of course is the same date and time as our NPDC meetings. So I'm not quite sure how we're supposed to meet with them at the same time. Lars Soderberg asked if we could change the date so that I could be present, and the vote was just pushed through. So I'm not really sure what to do on that. But
pardon me for interrupting. I have a couple of ideas for how we might resolve that.
Okay.
But I want to ask something specific. So on the screen under that March 2021 item, the last sentence there, it says the MAP work group is waiting on approval from the NPNEDC for the expanded area plan boundary. That caught my eye. If that was March 2021, I'm not sure if that was an at the moment note or if that is still the case. So there's a question on the boundaries, have they been approved or is there an issue that's holding up approval? We have a little bit of a question about scheduling the meetings. We have with the resignation letters we're going to receive momentarily. We have some openings that need to be advertised if we're going to replace those seats on the committee. So I think that there's a lot going on here that's a little uncertain.
Yeah.
And we have also scheduled the area plan guidelines for discussion with the public at our October 23rd meeting. So my suggestion would be that the Nantucket area plan consider sending a representative to that NPNEDC meeting rather than holding their own meeting at the same time, at least for October 23rd. That would seem prudent.
I would agree. Yeah,
Okay.
and the other part was, you just brought up a very good point where they didn't want to advertise. They wanted to promote within. They were wanted to make sure that anyone on the board was from Nantucket, which I get, and I have with my family has land in Nantucket, so that's why I stepped forward for this. So I understand the concerns, but you know we have rules and regulations that we need to follow. And just a side note, I reached out to the town administration because when I was on the Concom, Lauren Goldberg from Copeland and Page came down and made a presentation on open meeting laws and how to share public documents. And it was really an invaluable seminar that she did at 4 Fairgrounds Road. And so I'm going to be sharing some links with the group. I think it would help to get them to speed because they had questions. You know, could they be at a cocktail party all together? Could they be at their, you know, Nantucket conservation meetings? So I gave them some heads up of how, when I was on the Concom, how we were able to go to, you know, the water quality meetings and not, we could talk, but not as in a group. And I mean, it's kind of educating them on ways and how to be a active and a positive participant on these work groups. And I think they were a little bit concerned about having any of this, but I would like to sit down with Michael Maynard and, you know, maybe another one would be Bruce Mandel and Kathy, and just sit down and give them a little heads up about how things work and how things go forward. So if Bruce and Mary, if you could help us out, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I would be happy to. And I think I saw Barry nodding his head that he would as well. So we can figure out how to schedule that.
Okay.
The next question I have is the second page of the letter. It references attachments, but I did not see any attachments. So these are summary results from the survey, but I don't even have the survey questions. Megan, if you want to scroll down on the document on the screen. So I would like to see if they're at the point of sharing the results, I would also like to see the actual data from the survey and the questions.
So Madam Chair, just one more thing. So I did see those. I'm kind of surprised that Diana didn't share those. I think that was probably just because she forgot. But one thing that was within there was out of 197, if I get the number right, 97 replied with comments, and those comments were never shared in. And the person that did the analysis didn't think they were important to share. And I basically told them everything needs to be shared with us. The minutes, we need to know who said what and all that other good things for, you know, keeping public records available to anyone at any time. So that's really was an issue with me of why were these comments not shared. So I think we really need to, like I said, sit down with them.
Yeah, we'll follow up on that as well. Any other comments or questions from commissioners regarding the update received from the Nantucket Area Plan Work Group? All right, not seeing any. So Leslie?
I just wanted to point out that the survey questions with the responses were provided, not the 97 open-ended ones. So we do have those internally. I just thought with the work group sort of coming apart a little bit, that they may need some more time to review those and decide how they want to present them to you before they're just out there being discussed without any context or without any discussion by the work group themselves first.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. So next we have the acceptance of resignations of Nantucket Area Plan Work Group members Diana Brown and Bob Kucharvi. We had those letters briefly on the screen before. So obviously we do thank them for their participation, and we'll see what we need to do about advertising for replacements. And just as an aside, the members of the current work group will have a opportunity to weigh in on any applicants as to who their preferred appointees would be. It's not that we're appointing from on high. And certainly Nantucket residency is a high priority for that. Leslie, do we need to vote to accept those resignations? Barry, I'll get to your comment in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you should vote on that.
All right, so before we do that, Barry, did you have a comment?
Let's dispense with that because and I'll make a motion at this point. We accept the resignations from those two individuals and authorize the chair maybe to send a letter of thanks.
All right,
Second that.
thank you, Joe, for seconding. Roll call vote, Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Wendy Hudson,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Kurt Johnson,
Aye.
Matt Lowell,
Aye.
Barry Rector,
Aye.
Joe Topham, Joe,
Joe.
Aye, sorry.
John Trudell,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre, aye. Right, moving on to the next item, section 106 status update on the wind farms from Holly Backus.
Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Barry, I skipped right
No,
over you.
no, don't worry about it. That's okay. No, it's
Go ahead.
get real easy to refocus on the agenda here. I'd probably just encourage this one I did find on the internet. And I probably encourage the commissioners, it's just worth a look to see the transaction of the last meeting they had. Mr. Topham did an excellent job of trying to work with him, but the impression I walked away with is they definitely need to have a chat with us. One of the members kept saying that, our rules and regulations were daunting procedures at this point, and that always catches my attention. I think at this stage, it would be definitely worth having that meeting because I think without that level of guidance, things may become a little problematic as time moves along. So I'm glad we're going to end. Let me just ask another question. No, actually, you know what? I'm gonna hold back on that because I think meeting with them first before we start posting for the positions will probably be a really good plan as well too. But sooner rather than later on that one, because the fact that they're going to have two meetings without the guidance of Mr. Topham from the NP and EDC raised a little concern after I watched that video. So we've got to make sure that's addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Joe?
Thank you, Barry. I left there quite, my head spinning. So I'm glad that you witnessed the same thing. So thank you.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I also watched the meeting, and for the benefit of those who may wonder, the Nantucket Area Plan Work Group is the name on the town's website. They are posted meetings. There are minutes posted. Their recordings are on the town's YouTube channel. I thought there was, quite a bit of misunderstanding of, possibly on both sides to, what the group was trying to accomplish and how, and what the NP and EDC and the guidelines were meant for. So I look forward to that meeting to clarify it and have us all working together.
Thank you.
All right, now moving on to Holly. Thank you for your patience, Holly.
Chair. So I'm just here to give a brief update. For those of you that are not aware, as town's preservation planner, I also have been the representative under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act for NPDC. And I will, since I think December of 2018, and I will say that was a little bit difficult for BOEM, the federal agency who oversees the wind farms, to actually acknowledge that there was more than one representative for Nantucket. And with that, with the help of our expert council, Cultural Heritage Partners, we've been able to go through review process. As my memo indicates, we've had Section 106 of multiple different reviews. They're all in different review processes, but only one that has impacted Nantucket that's actually been approved by the Department of the Interior, which is Vineyard Wind, which is the only one that we have any type of a good neighbor agreement with. I think the biggest thing for the commission to understand and acknowledge is Nantucket's special quality of being a National Historic Landmark. and a National Historic Landmark. They're under Section 110F of the National Historic Preservation Act. Any developers are supposed to do basically be aware of any hard harm to the NHL. They're required to avoid or minimize any and mitigate any adverse effects. And I will say that the town and our expert council have been able to really, being able to make sure that these developers and our and BOEM is held accountable. Again, the wind farms are an unprecedented taking off our coast. And if you all have not seen the op-ed that was put out this week by Cultural Heritage Partners, I would encourage you to do so. But that really answers and a lot of questions, if you will, from the general public. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have as far as under the Section 106 reviews.
Thank you, Holly. I'll note that the op-ed that you just referred to is posted on the Nantucket Current website. It was not part of our packet. It came out after our agenda was published. And I also have a request. The letter that you provided to us appears to reference a link to the offshore wind work group website on the town's webpage, but the actual document did not come through with that link. So either in the posted minutes, can we correct that either in the minutes or with a better version of the document that includes a link? That would be appreciated. Joe, go ahead with your comment, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, through you to Holly. Good evening, Holly. At town meeting, someone got up on the floor and said that there was no NPDC representative. Aren't you kind of our representative for this? So
Yes.
I'm just, okay, so the facts were wrong. I just want to make sure and get that public. Yeah, and also there was another one said that we rejected the Monomoy group report, and that's also false. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Other comments or questions for Holly? Megan, do you want to put that note up on the screen? John, go ahead.
Sure. Just in that article, I just wanted to, through you, Madam Chair, to Holly, to see what she thought about a couple of the statistics. Just to quote the article, it said a recently disclosed study by a major wind corporation admits that at least 15% of tourists are unlikely to return to communities like Nantucket once the wind farms are installed. And then the studies by the community themselves show a real figure to be about 30%. What's your take on that? Because obviously that represents really the livelihood of Nantucket when you talk about tourism, and 15 to 30% is a significant amount of percentage lost in revenue dollars.
It is. I will say first off, CHP being the utmost law firm for cultural heritage and historic preservation law, I will say they know their stuff, and they also make sure that they're putting out facts. I think it's something, again, the wind farms and its possible negative impacts financially to our National Historic Landmark are I think it's really hard to really put down what exactly that's going to be. There were also some statistics out there saying that it was actually going to generate tourism, which a lot of us would have to disagree to that, especially when we realize why people come to Nantucket. So I think that's something to note, that it's a fluctuated percentage, but I would have to support what CHP indicated in there.
Thank you.
Go to Bert.
Yeah, a week ago, I was out fishing in a boat when we were going around the west end of Muskegon. And I was surprised. I could very easily see that big black box, which is their transformer platform out there, with just sitting at sea level. And we were told in the beginning, at least that's what I heard, that we would not be able to see it from Nantucket.
Through you, Thank you, Madam Chair. Taber, yes, this is why, understanding the impacts are going to be very important. Through the Section 106 review process, the developer is required to show photo simulations of what exactly it's going to look like. And each individual wind farm, as technology changes, their design envelope changes. So again, that's why the photo sims are very important. Yeah, we were told we weren't really going to see much. So yeah, no, I share your thoughts on that.
Go to Wendy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think there were a ton of great points in that article. I would sort of push back on that 30% cut in tourism, though. I don't see that happening. I mean, I was in Montecito, California not too long ago, and there are oil rigs sitting right there. And, that hasn't stopped like Prince Harry and Oprah and everybody living in Montecito. I mean, they were huge and in your face. So the tourism question is less persuasive to me. However, the points about obstructionism and like how we all want to see something happen here that's appropriate, and that, by not cooperating, these big entities are really, doing themselves a disservice, honestly, doing all of us a disservice, and working together is absolutely the appropriate way to go. And there were some really good precedents set, I thought, by that vineyard wind conversation a few years back. So I would just encourage us not to get too uptight about that and be like alarmist on that. And that number, it just doesn't ring true to me. But there's a ton that really did ring true. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm going to add my perspective, and I appreciate that Holly acknowledged that it's not knowable what the impact will be from the wind farms. I personally have been a fan of wind energy since I was little. My first job was at the old mill. That probably set the tone for me. I would in no way change my vacation plans based on whether or not there was a wind farm there. And I would be more likely to go somewhere where I could see wind power in action. So I just wanted to confirm that the potential for increased interest is real. But also, again, acknowledge that it's not knowable what the impact would be. I would agree with Wendy that a 30% reduction is highly unlikely. Any other comments from commissioners? Actually, I do, sorry. I have one other point that I want to make, and that is that it's easy to lump together all of the projects when you're talking about them. And I don't think we're doing a good enough job of saying what is specific to Vineyard Wind, with whom we already do have a good neighbor agreement and who has already made concessions to protect the interest of Nantucket, as opposed to the projects that are still in negotiations or just early planning stages. It's easy to paint them all with a broad brush, and I think it's important to remember that Vineyard Wind has been cooperative and recognized the interest of the town to some extent, where other companies have not reached that point yet. So let's please remember that distinction. Holly, you probably do need to correct me on something I said, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think what's really important is on the developments is, again, make sure people are looking at the town's work group website. We update that regularly with the assistance of our expert council, CHP. It's an ongoing, moving, target with all these different developments going on at different stages with the federal government. Some of them have actually had to kick back and actually start from scratch over again. Each one of these developers are going through procurement processes with states, not just Massachusetts. And so, again, it's really hard for myself and my fellow colleague, Lauren Sinatra, to do this as staff with obviously other duties for the town and the county. So when it comes to the developments themselves, Vineyard Wind, again, was unprecedented. Will all of them have a good neighbor agreement? We don't know. And then as technology changes, again, the cumulative effects is what needs to be really understood. And I think the cumulative effects is what we really don't know for every single development. All
Is Holly freezing up?
all the way from the first one all the way through to all the other ones if they get developed. Can you all hear me? My apologies.
You're kind of fading in and out there, Holly. We had a delay. If you want to try again, you seem to be all right now.
Okay, here, hopefully this works. It's basically, to my point is there's multiple developments in multiple stages, and as the technology changes from the size of these individual wind farms themselves, and the size of the blades, we really don't know what the overall cumulative effects are going to be. So I would just make it a point to monitor our website as you see fit, and we'll be updating that as best as we can, and hopefully be able to answer questions along the way.
Thank you, Holly. We'll go to Barry.
Go to Seth if you don't mind.
No, let's just go in order, please, Barry.
All right, yeah, no problem. This is a seasoned group, and I'm going to say what you already know, but you always have to be careful what the news media is painting with their broad brushes at this point. It's meant to generate a reaction at times, without solid data. Things like, oh, we're going to see a 30% reduction in tourism. You could see an increase in tourism as the fishermen are going out there with the new artificial reefs created by it. And Holly's right too, as time moves along with newer technologies coming out, things can wind up changing. I was just reading less than 2 days ago, there's new experimental one blade wind generators that are being used, that are starting to be tested and used on the ocean. So things can change as we move along. Thanks.
Thank you, Barry. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if this is outside the scope, just cut me off. But if you follow the projects that are going through various stages of permitting or have received permits, off the southwest shore of Nantucket, several of them are currently actively trying to get out of their permits, or even going as far to pay upwards of $60 million to break their contracts. So it is a very challenging situation. It's a very financially taxing business. I think a lot of people didn't realize this. And independent of whatever people's thoughts are on wind energy, whether you're for it, against it, don't really care. I do think that the NP and EDC, as our regional planning authority, should be taking a more active role in some of these conversations. And I appreciate Holly, being there as our staff representative, but I think this discussion here is good today, but I think we should, be taking a more active commissioner role as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Holly, did you want to address any of the points that Seth brought up about the likelihood of a contract being renegotiated or withdrawn?
That really has to do with individual developers. So for instance, you all remember Mayflower Wind, which went through procurement with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They changed their name to South Coast, sorry. They keep on changing too, names. So it gets really hard to follow along. And again, another reason why we're very appreciative of having our expert council. This is what they do. Yes, they were retracted, and Seth, you're absolutely correct. There have been fees that these developers have paid to cancel out their contract. So again, it's very, I would think, volatile. It's also very political from the federal government. And as technology changes, I think we're going to see more of that, and there's different phases. So it's really, really hard to pinpoint one towards the other, but I want this commission to realize that as each individual development goes through the review processes, and if they are approved through the Department of the Interior, that the cumulative effects is something that is unprecedented. We really don't know what that's going to be.
Thank you, Holly. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Right, thank you, Holly, for this report, and I do plan to be following up with you and Lauren to learn more about it. It seems like it's starting to to actually have an impact on Nantucket, not only from the construction, but also from the Good Neighbor Agreement with the funding. I believe the first installment of that funding is now with the Community Foundation, and we're looking forward to hearing more about how that will reach the community.
Well, there'll be a launch on that later this fall, is all I can tell you.
Thank you, Holly.
You're welcome.
All right, next item on the agenda, the special town meeting articles of planning concern. Megan, if you put that list up on the screen. And we have a revised document from what was sent in the packet, so we want to make sure that revision is included in the minutes.
The revised document is also in the packet.
Oh, great. Thank you. So Leslie, would you take us through this?
Madam Chair, if I may.
John, go ahead.
For the first, the general bylaw, short-term rental regs, I'd like to be consistent in recusing myself from discussion with that, and then I would rejoin number 2.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Leslie?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So there are, I believe, excuse me, I thought the list that was in the packet was complete. Okay, so there are 20 articles on the special town meeting warrant for November 7th, and we've included in your packet a spreadsheet of articles that we think may be of planning concern. And I don't know if you want to go through these one by one, or if you want me to just run through the list, or if you all want to ask questions, but I guess I can start with the first 2. The first 2 relate to short-term rentals. The first one is the short-term rental general bylaw that has all of the regulations. So that amends what was adopted at last year's annual town meeting and adds new regulations that came out of the short-term rental work group and changes made by the select board at their meetings. And then Article 2, the companion article, would add short-term rental as an allowed by right use in all districts except for the commercial industrial. So those 2 articles are very much tied together. Even under zoning, if the use is allowed by right, the use can't legally function unless it complies with the regulations that are in Article 1. And the way these articles are currently represented in the warrant is that they're a package. So one would not move forward without the other unless an alternative motion was provided at town meeting. Okay, the next article that we've identified as potentially planning concern is Article 6. That would take land around the Surfside wastewater treatment plant that's used as conservation and would authorize that to be conveyed to the land bank for better management. Article 7, these are a series of easements in the Surfside area. These easements are needed for utility and future road work. So that would further contribute to future infrastructure improvements in the area, both vehicular and pedestrian and other. Article 8 is a home rule petition for a bike path easement. We've been working with the neighbors in this area to provide voluntary easements, but this home rule petition is needed for a portion of the bike path that would cross over a conservation restriction. So the conservation restriction would have to be released and a home rule petition is required for that. Article 10, the nobody or playing field site enhancements. This was on the warrant at the annual. I don't believe that the commission took a position on that, but it seems like it could tie into the open space and recreation plan, which you just endorsed. So that may be something that you want to support. Article 12 is an appropriation for town of Nantucket employee housing for the airport. Housing is an important topic. It's something the commission has talked about. So I thought that may be something of interest. Article 13. Excuse me, I just explained Article 13. That's the airport one. Article 12 is appropriation to construct town of Nantucket employee housing. So same thing there. Housing is important for employees and having people here to do work and be part of the community. Article 15 is to amend the description for where a new public works facility may be located. This would add a spot in the commercial industrial area. And the amendment to this is something that you supported last year. This is just adding yet another location. Article 18 is a sewer district amendment for Codfish Park. This is something that was proposed as a citizen petition. This is something that we think the commission may want to recommend that the FinCom not support. Codfish Park is an environmentally sensitive area for a lot of different reasons, and an area where additional development probably should not be encouraged. And I am on the staff committee that makes recommendations to the select board, and we recommended that they not support this article. Article 20, sewer district, Burnt Swamp Lane. This is an area where there are environmentally sensitive wetlands, the soil conditions are poor, and it's in the Hummock Pond watershed. So this is something that the commission may want to support.
Leslie, Article 19 is also a sewer district map change. Was there a reason why that one was not included as potentially a planning concern?
I think with that one, there's not really any compelling reason to support it or any compelling reason to not support it. And our work group actually felt that way as well. So unless you really want to take a position on that one, I think we should just let the voters decide. Yeah.
Discussion on any of these, and let's limit the discussion to not the short-term rental articles to begin with, and then we'll come back to those at the end. So for any of the other articles, are there questions or comments from commissioners? Do you need more information about what's in the article? Do you have a feeling of supporting it along with the staff recommendation, or in the case of number 18, not supporting it along with the staff recommendation?
I agree with all the recommendations, including Codfish Park, Madam Chair.
So for clarification, did you say including or excluding?
Including the no
Okay.
on Codfish Park, yes.
Thank you.
I've done a little bit of homework on that because that just kind of popped up recently. And I think that it's premature and there's a lot more work to be done to figure that all out at some point, if at all. So thank you, though.
Joe Topham, did you have a comment?
No, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button, Madam Chair. Sorry.
Any other comments from commissioners on the non-short-term rental articles? Okay, so moving the discussion to the short-term rental articles. John, are you recusing from this discussion as well?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
Any comments or questions? Yes, Don Holgate.
I'll be recusing from short-term.
Thank you, John. Okay. Joe, excuse me, Dave Iverson.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, Leslie said that when she was describing that if one passed, if one didn't pass, that none of them would pass, but wasn't it changed that the general bylaws could pass alone without the zoning bylaws?
Just a second.
And that's through you to Leslie, Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
And I'm sorry, I misspoke on that. Dave is correct. Article 1 does not have that language. It's Article 2 that has the language about not passing unless Article 1 is also passed.
Great. That just wanted to confirm that, and that I wasn't confused. Thank you.
Thank you. Bert?
Yeah, two things. I've got to recuse from the short-term rental and the Codfish Park. That the owner that brought up that article is the person that bought that house for my wife. So I'll stay out of that discussion, please.
Thank you, Bert. Any other comments or questions from commissioners? All right, are the commissioners prepared with a motion to indicate that these are of planning concern, to support them, or to support staff recommendations? Leslie, are we ready for that?
Yes, if there's no further comment.
I'd make that motion, Madam Chair.
Okay,
I'll
so
second it, Madam Chair.
the motion is to determine that the articles on this list are of planning concern and to support the staff recommendations for those articles. And we have a motion by, I think it was Dave, seconded by Nat.
Hi, Joe.
Thank you. Seconded by-
Sorry, that's okay.
I appreciate it. Any further comment before we go to a vote? Beth?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think we need to amend or split the two motions so that the people who recused could vote on
Oh,
the ones that they didn't recuse
Yep.
from.
Yeah.
Thank you, Seth. I'm
Right
going
on
to say the
again.
same.
And on that,
All right, so
That's right
for-
on it.
So for, let's go just in order. For, do we want to do 1 and 2 together? John, just
Yes.
if that's what we need. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion for 1 and 2, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you,
And I'll
Dave.
second that again.
Thank you, Joe, for seconding. So on Articles 1 and 2 to indicate that they are of planning concern and to support the staff recommendation. Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Christy Frantella,
Aye.
Don Holgate is recused. Wendy Hudson.
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
Aye.
Bert, are you recused on this one? I'm sorry.
Yes.
You are, okay. Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Barry Rector,
Aye.
Joe Topham,
Aye.
John Trudell is recused, and Mary Longacre, aye. Now can we have the same motion for the remaining articles?
I'd make that motion, Madam Chair, for Article 6, 7, 8.
Oh, hold up.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Oh, well, wait, we're gonna have to separate one out for, we're gonna
Oh,
have to
for Codfish
separate
Park,
the sewer
right.
district out.
Yeah.
So I'd make that motion for 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 13, 15, and 20.
Okay. Any further discussion from commissioners? Sorry, second for that motion, please.
Second.
Thank you, Barry, for seconding. Further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Christy Frantella,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Wendy Hudson,
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
Aye.
Bert Johnson is recused. Nat Lowell.
No,
Aye.
No, he's not.
from the next one, Mary.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for keeping us on track. So Bert, your vote on the articles from which you are not recused.
Aye.
Thank you. Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Barry Rector,
Aye.
Joe Topham,
Aye.
John Trudell,
Aye.
Mary Longacre, aye. And then finally, a motion for Article 18, please.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Dave.
I'll second that again.
Thank you, Joe. So any further discussion on Article 18 before we vote? Roll call vote. Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Christy Frantella,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Wendy Hudson,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Bert Johnson is recused. Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Barry Rector,
Aye.
Joe Topham,
Aye.
John Trudell,
Aye.
Mary Longacre, aye. All right, I think we got through that appropriately. Thank you all for your assistance. Next item on the agenda, ongoing discussion of our enabling legislation, the vision, mission, and objectives. So we did have a brief discussion at our last meeting, and there were some suggestions which I captured by Wendy and by Nat. If I missed anything, please speak up. Wendy and Nat, if you have alternate language, please speak up. And of course, any commissioner with any further comments is welcome to join in as well. So comments or questions from commissioners, please. I also made an edit to change self-resiliency to simply resiliency. I'm sorry, Wendy, go ahead.
Just a thought that perhaps referencing the islands with the NHL, the National Historic, whatever, like we just went through with the wind farm, that might be appropriate language to include in the bottom where we were talked about historic preservation. It's just a consideration of the landmark status. Perhaps that's the way.
we might say support historic preservation and protect National Historic Landmark status.
Or like can consider, or I'm not sure if there's a balance word there. You know, very much like what we just talked about with the wind farm, that we're like weighing a few different things, but we're considering it, you know. I thought the landmark status is just, it's important, and I appreciate the reminder, and I appreciated that conversation. So it's just occurring to me that maybe that belonged here, but you can all say that I'm wrong. But
we could just say support historic preservation and National Historic Landmark status or designation. We lost Holly, unfortunately, so she's not here to guide us in that language. Barry?
Yeah, just this has been on the agenda for 2 months, and here we are at this point trying to hammer this out. And I thought we were going to be provided some additional information in terms of why certain things are being supported here. And I'd like to be able to comment back a little bit further, but I didn't realize that would be wordsmithing these things again tonight.
I'm not clear on what you're asking for, Barry.
I think what I'm asking for is that I believe 2 months ago, the commissioners were asked to provide additional information about what they would like, and also some type of supportive documentation about to further explain the construct of why why some of these things were appearing in here. So, and I'm not really seeing that. And, here we are now also just having to say, okay, well, we're going to put additional language in here as well.
Well, we had the discussion at our last meeting where two of the commissioners did suggest additional language, as you said.
Right.
We weren't there for that meeting. I'm not recalling anything top of my head about supporting documentation for any of this, so I'm still fuzzy on what you're looking for there.
Respectfully, I'm going to disagree with that part of what you're saying at this point. I thought we had a little bit clearer understanding with that, so that as commissioners we could kind of understand, what was the formulation and rationale for doing some of these things that we're now coming in and adding to and or amending. And I know I missed one meeting, but I know I was there for the meeting prior to that where the genesis of this started, because we were definitely asking for additional information. And I would appreciate just a follow-up comment because I want to drill down into one thing a little bit further.
Well, I don't have any other hands up, so if you want to continue, Barry.
Okay, so, well, all right, let's talk about support historic preservation and the Nantucket and the historic status that we're looking at. One thing, most of these make sense because these are slight changes to me that makes sense about, just kind of fine tuning most of the points we put out. But with the historic preservation thing, I think what I'm concerned with is I need someone to help me make the construct of how that's of a regional planning concern. I mean, I could certainly argue it's a local planning concern, and we have plenty of groups that deal with that on a local basis. But I'd like the construct made for me that I understand the regional aspect of that. And then I just appreciate just a little opportunity to follow through.
All right, is there anyone with a comment in response to Barry's question? No?
I'll try, Madam Chair, to kind of see how I explain how I see this. I think that it's our own fault for not, we should have, if there was such a willingness to add to this, we should have sent stuff to staff between meetings. And the stuff that's on here now is what we talked about the last meeting, and I agree with those things, but I think everyone's pretty much in agreement with the genesis of these things. At least that's what message I'm getting. Very. I mean, that's how I see it. I mean, I don't, a few tweaks, but I mean, I think it's pretty good.
Other comments, Wendy, before we go back to Barry?
I would say, a couple things very, like, I agree that supporting historic preservation, that isn't quite that didn't quite capture what I was trying to say, which was balance with the National Historic Landmark status, which I think that is really appropriate to include in here. And I do think it's regional concern, et cetera. I also just would mention that we knew that you felt strongly about this, and it's why we didn't just vote it through last time. So, I don't think we ever did talk about like supporting documentation for something along this line. I don't see it for anything else in here. So that but I mean, we've hammered that a little bit to death, I think, but I thought that balancing conversation from the wind farm with, environmental versus historic is the appropriate role for this body, and certainly important to me.
Barry?
So, the thing I sometimes I'm a little concerned about what the scope is of what we're trying to do. And we are clearly a regional planning agency. And so I'm concerned too, when we start adding in additional things like this, we appear to be the master of everything. And there are plenty of local groups on the island that do these precise things. So, I mean, if they needed assistance or on a particular thing, they can always turn to this organization into which to do it. And we certainly have done that in the past. But on the other side of the coin, I want to be a little cautious about, how we're perceived, what we're trying to do, and not overstep certain boundaries that are well covered in the local arena here through other various organizations. And there's my concern, and there's why I'm kind of looking at that construct as well too. Just one other thing, Leslie, I thought you sent something out regarding asking the commissioners to get some additional information on things. Or am
I did.
Yeah, okay, okay, so I that is founded under which I do remember seeing that. So I think as we look through these things, those are where I think we need to be a little cautious about what domains we're into here. And like I said, we've certainly gone through our share of like, oh, okay, well, why are you tracking into that thing? So it's like we should be careful about whether we're tracking into things that are under the purview and domain of the county commissioners. Like I said, with local groups here as well too, I think you need to give some real clear thought about whether we are overstepping our boundaries here with them. And certainly if they want assistance or something, like I said, that's a whole different thing. That is a whole different thing. Thank you.
We'll go to John Trudell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Barry, with all due respect, I understand what you're trying to do and say, and looking at this, we've been revisiting this for multiple meetings, and I think we're getting to that point where we should kind of hammer it down. So in that sense, I 100% agree. However, Wendy makes a good point, and I do agree that when we're talking about our mission, as we're trying to define it, the historical preservation is an integral part of this, and it's not just, as Barry is saying, it's regional. And I think it is really important it does encompass the region. When we talk about anything with the historical, I guess, landscape of the Cape, the islands, Provincetown, any town on the Cape, we are looking at tourism, economic development, long-term planning, and I think the historical aspect, it plays into all of those things. So if we're looking at mission statement, I don't think it's out of the purview to include historical preservation in the line item there, because it is the celebration and appreciation of what we're trying to do as a long-term goal, and it's part of that mission. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We'll go to Joe Topham.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Barry brought up many meetings ago, I don't think we want to be too specific, put a too fine of a point on this. I think that historic preservation encapsulates a lot and allows us to kind of move in and out to certain aspects of Nantucket and et cetera. So I like what Wendy said. I kind of wish she had put it in a little earlier. So I could have thought about it a little bit more, but I'm curious about getting too fine of a document. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Joe. Wendy, I want to go back to you. I think it's important that we know exactly what you're trying to add to this document. So all I did was capture the concept. We really need what kind of wording you're looking for here. So if we can go back to you, if you can either say that what I have there, support historic preservation, is sufficient, or if you want to change that so that we have a better understanding of what you're looking for, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, thanks. In the past, we've had words like character, which is harder to sort of put a finger on, but I do think it's a lot of what we do, whether it's, the kinds of traffic solutions we suggest, going back to things, it definitely is related to the historic character of the place. That is the gist of it. Is it the overarching point? No, it's a balancing with these other things, but I think it belonged. Obviously, I don't have a better way to put it, or I would have. I did look at that, this list before. I thought perhaps that just alluding to the island as the historic landmark that we did a minute ago was a strong way to put that in there. Better than the softer language of supporting historic preservation. It's really trying to get at the character of the island. We absolutely do consider this all the time in a good way. And it's not that I'm saying that we're preservation trusts and we're like worried about, the same issues. Certainly not, Barry, as you're right. There's plenty of people that are doing super important things, but the kinds of decisions we make, the kinds of solutions we suggest, whether it's traffic with no stoplights, all of it is related to something that we haven't gotten in this document, and I do believe belongs. That's
right. So Wendy, let me take a stab at alternate wording and tell me if this is any better. So instead of the bullet that's there, if it said balance consideration of our national historic landmark status with planning. Just, to use your word
exactly
balance.
what I said in a long-winded way. That is the point. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's great.
All right, so I'm going to repeat that, Megan, if you can make sure we capture this. Balance consideration of our national historic landmark status with planning. And maybe it needs to say planning efforts for proper grammar, but
that's good.
Right, Barry?
Yeah, you're close, and that's kind of where I was tracking to. I'd be really careful about mixing the words balance with planning in there, because I'm afraid that could be taken into some really odd and weird directions. I think if we recognize it as an NP and EDC, or whatever our next moniker is, I think the recognition of it is great. We need to be able to incorporate that. But the moment you start saying, all of a sudden it's going to be like, well, planning isn't even considering that. And, how dare you? This is where we need to, at times, I think we need to choose the concepts with, again, I'm not trying to wordsmith, but with a degree of precision so that we're not going to necessarily run afoul of things. And, in the celebration and appreciation, and believe me, by next month, I want to give you a better term than that. You know, there would be a vast difference between, you know, support, equity, and opportunity, as opposed to balance economic and opportunity, you know, with planning in mind or something to that nature. So I want to partially agree with you. I just don't want to fully agree. And my suggestion is to use the phrase, God only knows, that keeps escaping my mind here, but I would change it to recognizing.
Wendy?
I definitely appreciate Barry. You've got like a lot more experience with this and have run into, you know, places where that word might make a big difference. That to me seems more semantics, or I don't know. Like I understand there's specificity. So recognizing or reflecting other language that we have in there up top would be fine. I'm very happy with choosing the right thing.
Okay, Dave?
Yeah, with all due respect to Barry and everyone else, I think that a lot of work has been put into this, and I personally think it looks good. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Other comments? And I believe where we are right now, I don't know where we are right now on the last item. So I had suggested, and Megan, this is why I asked you to capture it, because I may not be able to remember it at this point. Oh, geez. Megan, can you read it back? Hopefully you wrote it down.
I did not write it down.
All right, so I think it was balancing consideration of our National Historic Landmark status with planning, and Barry, I agree, the word planning is not the perfect word there.
Yeah.
But when using the term balancing, it implies two sides. Recognizing our historic landmark status, is that sufficient, Wendy? It takes out the consideration and the balancing. So I'm seeing a note from nod from Wednesday. Okay, so recognizing our historic landmark, our National Historic Landmark status is now the bullet at the end. Megan, I don't know if you can edit what's on the screen, but if you could please write that down, that would be helpful. And Barry, is your hand still up for comment on this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's get her to get that up there first, if you don't mind. If you're good, waiting a minute.
Well, I think we're looking at a PDF, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't have
okay.
this readily available in an editable document. Sorry.
I really appreciate the fact that we've gone through this, and I know it seems like a little word tinkering, but one of the next things we're going to talk about is Article 83 going up before the Senate committee. And there was a lot of stuff that was leveled at this commission about what we do and we don't do. And I'm not saying that everything that was leveled against us either. There was a lot of inaccuracies in it. And I hate to say it, I'll be very upfront. There was a lot of lying that took place.
Let's try and stay
But
on top.
no, but you have to.
With this.
All right, I understand, but you have to understand the construct under which I'm bringing this up is that we're looking at what we become for a next generation. And all I'm urging you to do is reflect on lessons that we've learned from the past. And I feel like if I did say something, I'd be a little remiss for wanting to do that. But I think this works so well and I'm thrilled with it. Thank you.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, Leslie. I don't think that we have voted on this at each stage. I think we have simply said this portion is complete for now and we've moved on to another portion. So I think that's where we are in this discussion. I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand to disagree with me. So let's move on to the next agenda item, which is discussion of text changes by Massachusetts Senate Council to Article 83 from Annual Town Meeting 2023. And Leslie, if you want to take us through this, and Megan, if you can put that on the screen.
So I talked with the chair about this. I received an email from town council to town administration. This is going to be on the select board's agenda for Wednesday night, and we felt that you all should be aware of what's happening. As you may recall, with any home rule petition, there is language in the motion that talks about authorizing the general court with the approval of the select board to make changes of form to the text as may be necessary or advisable in order to accomplish the intent and public purpose of the legislation in order to secure passage. So that's what's happened here. The certified copy of Article 83 as approved by town meeting was sent to Senate Council for review. Senate Council made a lot of suggested changes, as you can see in the red line version. I've gone through these, town council has looked through these. These are non-substantive. Sections have been reworded, sections have been reordered, but the overall article hasn't changed in terms of scope or intent. So there's not really any action here for the commission to take tonight. It was more of an FYI. The action lies with the select board. But if you do have any comments to be forwarded, now would be the time. And this isn't the time to really talk about whether you agree with Article 83 or not. This is just about these changes. And just so the commission knows, the article has not been advanced yet because these changes are pending. So there's not a House bill, it's not at a committee. This is the first step in the process to this moving forward in some way.
And so Leslie, I think what you're saying, the next normal step in the process would be for the select board to endorse the changes that were made at the state level, so the article then does move forward in its normal path.
Correct.
So again, this is not an opportunity for us to discuss the merits or the details of the article. It is simply informational for us to be aware of the article's position in the process and the changes that have been made at the state level, and which will be appearing before the select board on Wednesday. Barry?
Just Leslie, do you have an approximate set of timeframes as to what the next steps are in the process? Besides the selectmen, determining what they want to do with this on Wednesday night. I just want to make sure this doesn't fall off our radar or somehow fast track through between now and our next meeting or two.
So the first step is the select board action on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Then this will be sent back. It will again work its way through the normal process. It will be assigned a bill number. And I've been in contact with our legislators. I've been in contact locally with Charity Grace Mofson, who's our liaison. And she knows that we are, very attuned to, the impacts of this, and that the commission wants to have an opportunity to comment at the appropriate time. And so we're on top of the scheduling of this, but so far we're back at the text level.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? All right, if there are none, this was information only, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, other committee reports. Wendy Hudson from the Rural Policy Advisory Committee.
There, sorry, I lost my mute button. The Rural Policy Advisory Commission met, I believe it was September 8th by Zoom. We had Ann Goby as the newly appointed, I've forgotten her title, actually, I'm sorry. She had stepped away from her Senate position to be the head of this newly created, I think, cabinet level rural person. A lot of talk about a letter of support from a housing bond bill that I made the point to include the transfer tax for sure. Not just me, Cape and Islands. We're always balancing a lot of, Western Mass versus, but we share a lot of, everybody has the challenges of housing and the costs of building in rural places is even higher than in the city because of the size of the project, et cetera. So that took a lot of conversation. Also, we had a really interesting presentation from, her name was Amy from, I've lost my too many tabs, I'm sorry. An act concerning safe drinking water in the state. So there was some really interesting information that it's not standardized at all to the degree you'd expect across the Commonwealth. So that was another one that we were all voting to support. I think those were the two biggest bullet points. And the next meeting is 2 months from whenever that was.
Thank you, Wendy. Barry, do you have anything to report from the Capital Program Committee?
Just real quick, we tend to meet on a weekly basis. So far, we've heard requests from the fire department, police department, as well as from natural resources. And we have a ways to go in the process. Everything we do gets ranked according to the individuals who sit on the board. There are 7 of us on it, and we got a ways to go still. Thank you.
And so, Barry, this is the start of your run up to the spring town meeting. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Dave, anything from Affordable Housing Trust?
We continue to look at more properties of interest. We have we have an RFP out for Orange Street. I'm not sure if we've gotten much response from that yet. We are working with the owner of Sparks Avenue about buying down some units there. So we're busy. We're at it.
Thank you, Dave. Bert Johnson, Contract Review Committee of Human Services. Anything to report from them?
Yes, so we received a $175,000 grant from the town, and we put out an RFP, and we're starting to receive proposals on the drug prevention and rehab programs.
Great, thank you, Bert. Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Joe Topham, anything to report there?
Yes, Madam Chair, we'll be meeting on this month. We'll be talking about the Nantucket pedicab and seeing how that pilot project went. We're also going to be discussing levels of e-bikes and pedicabs, and then talking about the Tom Nevers shared road use path, getting some updates on that. And then there's a Mid-Island project going from 5 quarters to the Rotary, where on Pleasant Street they'll be adding a sidewalk and a bike path, bike lane, and then of course Williams Lane, getting an update and a little bit of a makeover. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Joe. Do you think that BPAC will be aiming for spring town meeting with any articles?
As this point, I think we may have one on the queue, but Jason Bridges, as you know, just stepped down and has moved up on, so I think we have to do a new officers. So we'll kind of decide what direction we take.
All right, thank you. Seth Engelborg, Harbor Plan Update Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's lots to report. So the state has officially accepted our notice to proceed. That indicates the planning boundary for the new harbor plan, and sets a 2-year clock on getting it done. And since that's happened throughout the summer, we've had a variety of public engagement. We had a large kickoff meeting at the Nantucket Hotel in June with about 100 people there. Then in August, there was a meeting at Great Harbor Yacht Club and also at the Nantucket Admiralty Club. And actually right now, tonight, just started at 6:30, there's an online public forum. So I'll be joining that after this. If anyone wants to go to give information on the harbor plan, you can join that. There's also an active survey that is open until the end of September. When I last checked, we had over 500 responses on that survey. It's the highest number ever in the history of our consultant urban harbor initiative at UMass Boston. surveying for towns so they work with other municipalities and we have the highest response rate. Ipswich was beating us for a while, but we've surpassed them. So there's a lot of good things going on the harbor plan, but if you want to give feedback, I would say join the meeting that's happening now, or go on and fill out the survey. And I can send both those links to Plus staff if needed.
Thank you, Seth. Any other reports from commissioners and other things they may be involved in? No need to keep us up to date on steamship, but I think you already did that tonight, Nat.
Yes, I did, Madam Chair. Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, other business, our next meeting, October 23rd at 5 p.m. via Zoom. Megan, do you have the 2024 calendar handy that you can put up on the screen? Or so we introduced this at the last meeting, and there was a request to just take the temperature of the commissioners on continuing to meet via Zoom as opposed to meeting in person or using a hybrid. Right now, the intention is to continue meeting via Zoom, but certainly are open to comments and discussion among commissioners about how that is working for them. And if necessary, I can go through, my particular reasons for preferring this format. But are there commissioners who would prefer to make a change at this time that we could consider? Or comments in general on the meeting format? If there are none, then we will continue meeting via Zoom. And if there's no other business, we will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Don. Second from Bert. Roll call vote. Seth Engelborg.
Aye.
Mr. Ferrantella.
Aye.
Don Holgate.
Aye.
Wendy Hudson.
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
Aye.
Bert Johnson.
Aye.
Matt Lowell.
Aye.
Ray Rector.
Aye.
John Trudell.
Aye.
I miss Joe Topham. Sorry,
Okay.
what's at the
Aye,
bottom
Madam
of the
Chair.
screen? And Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you all, and we'll see you.
Thank you, everyone.
Aye.
Not at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Joe, you're looking a little young there.
Looks like the kid in the Geico.
Chevy Biscayne though behind him.